Hello, everybody. Dave Neal here, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. Happy Friday to all of you guys out there. Happy April Fool's Day. This isn't an April Fool's. This is a real story. Kaitlyn Bristowe with a shocking tell-all on the Guys We Effed podcast, saying Shawn Booth shamed her for years. She's going to share this story about how an Uber driver found her crying in his car after Shawn yelled at her on the phone, and what they couldn't get over, and the shaming that existed from a culture that wasn't ready for talk about sex on a TV show that's about that. Of course, the show's about falling in love, both physically, mentally, emotionally, and that involves, of course, the fantasy suites. And Kaitlyn lays out in this conversation I'm about to play for you guys the most raw, I believe, we've heard from her describing her relationship with Shawn. Obviously, that did not work out. So we'll go through their breakup statement and all that. But this episode just dropped, I believe, right now on the Guys We Effed podcast, which was behind the luminary paywall for the last couple of years, but I guess it's back to being public now. So we'll get into all of that. Now, just to catch you guys up, obviously Kaitlyn was one of two bachelorettes on her season where they had the men pick and choose which one they wanted. The men voted on her, which is just absurd that they pitted the ladies against each other. Of course, not what's going to be happening, hopefully, this season. Premiering July 11th, 2022. Now, with Kaitlyn, obviously, she's moved on to greater things. She's dating Jason Tartick. They're engaged. And, of course, Off the Vine podcast, she has a wine company. I mean, she's really killing it. She's probably, I would have to say, number one, if not number two, definitely top three all-time most successful people to come out of Bachelor Nation, and sex-positive Canadian. Not quite ready for some of the puritanical moms that exist in the world out there in Bachelor Nation. So let's get into it all. Here's what was said after they broke up. After 3 incredible years, we have decided to go our separate ways. This difficult decision comes after thoughtful, respectful consideration. Even though we are parting as a couple, we're very much committed to remaining friends. Yeah, right. Due to the nature of how we met, our relationship has been very public. We have enjoyed sharing it with all of you, but we ask that you respect our decision and our privacy at this time. Okay, standard fill in the blank. And now this is important because she mentions like what a load of crap that all was and how toxic it was actually getting. So let's jump right into it. And by the way, if you aren't familiar and want to join our Patreon, I'm actually recording this episode live from the Patreon, which is a private membership-only community. I go live with them as we prepare our content for everyone. If you work from home or are super bored, or you're stay-at-home, or you're working at the wood shop, whatever it is you're doing, and you have a lot of free time and you want to listen to some music and join some friends, patreon.com/Dave Neal. Plus, I have my latest stand-up set over there too. I think that's the photo of it. So you can go check that out if you want to watch my latest stand-up set on the Patreon. All right, let's get into it. Business is done. Let's have a listen on the Guys We Effed podcast. And by the way, there will be swears and things like that. It's a rated R podcast, obviously. I tell you guys that because you too, we got to be a little careful with our swear words. It's a kind of a conservative app. We got to be careful. But just so you know, this won't be kid-friendly.
I was I was actually 100% sure who I was going to pick, but I still really did care for these two guys where I'm like, it's so weird because if this guy wasn't here, I would have to pick one of them. Like, it's so weird to think that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really liked 3 of them.
How many of them did you fuck?
Whoa.
3.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome.
Did you do stuff with other guys like fingering or like, something out, like cup the boob or something? Or
I'm trying to, this feels like so long ago, but it's funny because in the fantasy series, like sex is important to me in a relationship. If I'm going to marry you and get engaged to you on this show, like intimacy and having sex is going to be important to me. And when you're given the opportunity to, take the relationships as far as you possibly can to see, because like I was so set on Shawn, but what if something intimate with Ben changed everything? And then we had this like beautiful chemistry and I'm like, whoa. So I was like probably making excuses for myself, but also I'm like justifying it because I'm like, well, why wouldn't I know that every man would do that. Any woman who is open sexually would
it's like Goldilocks.
Now, obviously, the Guys We Have podcast, if you don't know them, they've kind of been in the forefront of the destigmatizing of slut shaming. So for them to just brazenly ask Kaitlyn, this is what they do on their podcast. They talk about things and try not to provide so much weight behind them, so much shame behind it. This is a good thing for people that want to be a part of that conversation.
And so
you're getting served hot guys on a platter. Fuck them all, Kaitlyn.
Yeah, exactly.
I did.
You're that bitch and fuck those guys.
I did. And
This is an incredible opportunity opportunity.
If you didn't fuck them, I'd be like, Kaitlyn, what the fuck?
And I mean,
This is a great opportunity.
You have to have STD checks before you go in there.
Oh.
Yeah, it's great.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And now, are there cameras in those suites or no?
No.
I love how little they know. They know nothing. They're like, are there cameras? Are there sound guys?
Suites is when you get to have a full night with somebody with no cameras or anything.
Good.
But what happened to me was usually in the morning, they'll just like the producers will pick you up and then you'll go do an interview. But on my season, they started bringing the cameras to the fantasy suites in the morning to see like what's their energy in the morning after all of this. And they ended up taking noises from my morning sex and like dubbing it over another part of the show. God. And that's when
you
I got
can't trust any of these people.
So essentially the slut shaming began when they manipulated the audio and shared sex noises. You know, I thought the fantasy suite was nothing at all, but I guess they used to do audio too.
So you got slut shamed by women watching The Bachelorette.
It's so crazy. You're on a show
hilarious.
where they're literally meeting you in captivity to borrow from Esther Perel's book.
Yeah.
I love that my friends Corinne and Christina here are just like surprised because they're so open about they've had this podcast for going on a decade, right? And they're shocked to hear that someone would go on a TV show where the fantasy suite is built into the show and you'd still get shamed. It's like, yeah. And it's 2022, guys, and it's still going on. Didn't Clayton Ecker get shamed?
Like, what?
Free
What
Clayton.
do they expect to happen? You're human beings.
Well, everyone's projecting. Anybody who does that shit on the internet, anybody who takes somebody down on the internet is fucking projecting.
That's so crazy.
I'm like, but what did it look like? Like, how did it seep into your life? And then how did it make you feel? How'd you handle it?
Well, it was a roller coaster because sometimes I thought it was funny and I was like, oh my gosh, these people are nuts. Like, this is so funny. And then it got to a point where it was affecting my relationship where he was like, yeah, why did you sleep with other people? And then that having all the voices affect him, then affected me. But so if you ever are bored and have like 3 minutes, you should YouTube Chris Harrison reading out mean tweets to me on the live show because he took it. He was
like, such a friend of women.
Yeah, seriously. He goes, I'm going to read some of these tweets just so people can like get the point of what you're reading every day. And there was like women being like, you belong in a dumpster.
Whoa. All right, let's go to the 103 mark here. So obviously this is just, you know, you got the women of guys we effed are they're, you know, obviously kind of in support of Kaitlyn sharing her story. So I feel like we get to see Kaitlyn here sort of unguarded as she says, you know, yeah, this was messed up. She mentions that her fiance Shawn was then slut shaming her after the audience was. It was almost like he reflected what this mass of people were thinking.
And I wasn't like, I actually protected him a lot in it because I was like, look, at the end of the day, I don't need this to be messier than it already is. Like,
right.
I know what happened, and if I knew I had to speak about it because I had shared that part of myself with the world, and that's how they knew who I was, and they were so invested in my relationship that I thought it was fair enough that I had to at least share like what had pretty much happened without making it even messier than it was. So it was, I hated putting out that fucking statement like, we remain friends and blah, blah. I don't even know what it said.
She goes, I hated putting out that statement. The statement we just read to you guys. All right, 2 more clips here.
Like, oh, fuck that. I'm not. And so in my podcast, I always interview Bachelor people. And I was visiting a friend in Seattle to visit her and her family. And I was like, oh, who lives in Seattle from Bachelor World I could podcast with? And Jason had just come off the season. And when I got to the podcast studio, I had been yelled at on the phone for going to podcast with a Bachelor guy so shortly after a breakup. And so I was,
what, by your ex?
Yeah. And
so their exes at the time, and she says Shawn yelled at her for going to interview another Bachelor contestant.
Crying. And I remember the Uber driver turning around to me and saying, don't ever let anybody talk to you like that. And I started bawling and I went inside, and then Jason comes in, and Jason is like Mr. Happy-go-lucky, positive energy. Like sometimes I'm like, you can't always be here. It's not fair. And so he came in and we had this little talk, and I was like, I'm going through it. Like I'm really going through it. I hope I can like do this podcast justice for you, but I'm going to turn the beat around. Like it's going to be.
And then her and Jason became friends. They became friends for a little bit. And by all means, go listen to this whole episode. It's great. I'm just playing you like a 6-minute clip here. Here's going to be the final 2-minute clip. But it's interesting. Like, she's going through this breakup, and then meanwhile, Jason just shows up.
Guilt.
But you hadn't done anything. Like you weren't cheating on him. You were on a show where this was the point of the show.
Yeah, I didn't feel guilt.
You felt guilt that it aligned with
done.
his trigger. Yeah.
Yes, and for so long, I felt like I had to make that up to him, and I allowed this abuse to happen, where I got to a point where I almost adopted his demons, and then I became insecure in the relationship, and then I became jealous, and then I became emotionally abusive. And
now I do believe in the law of attraction, which essentially means like equals like. So if you're surrounding yourself, like look at your 5 closest friends. If you don't like them, then you're probably not in a happy place, right? Whoever you surround yourself with is an indication of who you are. And if you're in an abusive, whether an emotional or physical relationship, you're not going to be your best self. You're not. You're going to be a withered down version of yourself, and you got to get out of that through the help of friends and family. We talked with Emily Moynes earlier this year about the financial abuse that she had been a part of because her husband took care of all the bills, and she couldn't leave because she had no money. And in relationships, you have to sort of, like I've always said, kind of grow side by side. You don't want a vine on a tree that smothers the tree. You don't want one to overshadow the other. You need to grow side by side. You need to keep, you don't want to be stagnant. And it just looked like they couldn't get over all the toxicity that came from presenting their relationship to the show. But of course, whatever Shawn was feeling, that's on him, right? Like she shouldn't be apologizing for whatever triggers he feels. He signed up for the show. That's how it was. Now you can hope that he's learned from this. We're all put on this earth, I believe, to learn from whatever our triggers are and overcome them and be spiritually enlightened. But Kaitlyn's learned from it too, and she got out of it, and good for her for telling her story. Let's go to the final clip.
Name calling because it had just gotten to that point in that relationship. And it felt like you were saying, just the bottom of a hole where I couldn't get out until you really, you have to face those demons. And I was like, I got to go visit family. I got to surround myself with people that love me, and I have to get away from this. And so that's why I started traveling and getting away. But yeah.
During that time, were you very open? Like, were you open with your friends and family about that you were kind of thinking of leaving the relationship, or were you quiet about it?
All right, great story about her dad right here. We'll wrap it up with this.
And I have 3 really solid best friends who I've had for one since I was 7 years old, and the other 2 since I was about 19. So I share everything with my family, my dad specifically, because he is just so he's just so wise is so cheesy. He's so wise, but he really is. And he really knows like what matters in life and how people should be treated. And he can just say it in such a simple way where you're like
grounded, man.
Yeah. So yeah, I was very open with my family about it.
That's good. That's good. Did they say did anybody get mad at him for calling you those terrible things?
Oh yeah. It's funny because my dad, being the compassionate man he is, he was like, Kaitlyn, I'm going to fly to Nashville. And if he's open to it, I'm going to have a conversation with him. Because he's like, I've learned so much through, a divorce and relationships and just through living life and making mistakes and feeling. And so he flew to my house and had a conversation with him. And I guess it went really well. And I came home and I was like, okay, maybe something's going to shift. And then the next day something was said to me and I was like, Dad, he said this. And he goes, my dad, who doesn't really swear, he goes, fuck a horse, Kate, leave.
All right, so good family there. Good story by Kaitlyn Bristowe. Man, she can tell the heck out of a story. All right, that's going to do it for this video. If you want to check all the behind-the-scenes live streams and stand-up comedy videos, you can go to patreon.com/Dave Neal. Follow me on Instagram at DNeals. I'm going to be uploading a time-lapse video of me building my desk. In fact, I'm going to do that right now for you guys. So get over to DNeals on Instagram, and you can see my new stand-up desk and treadmill that I built and all that jazz. Everyone have a good rest of the Friday. I hope you all have a fun weekend. If there's any breaking news, I'll come give it to you. But if there isn't, that'll be it from me. Bye, everybody.